Bang, Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara is not with us today. And today we are checking out the QSP Penguin. This knife was gifted to us by our awesome homie out there, Lavenderpants 86. If you are in the community a lot, watching lots of videos and writing lots of comments, you probably see him all over the place. He is a great dude in the community and a huge supporter of our channel. So let's get into the good and bad on this knife, but first a few specs. So the overall length is 7.1 inches, so I'd consider this a medium-sized knife. Some people might consider it small, but it might be large to some people because it does have a blade length of 3.1 inches. So it's right in the 3-inch mark, but just a smidgen over. But the actual cutting length, I think, is 2.8 inches or something, so not a big knife by no means. The blade steel is D2, and then the handle material, this is a Micarta. Let me see if I can focus it. Okay, so this is a, what's it called? It's like a blue jean Micarta. I'm trying to think of the exact name of it. It's like jean Micarta. So it's basically Micarta made out of blue jeans, which is very cool because it actually has a very cool texture. And I will say this Micarta, because the price of this knife is like 30 bucks. So for a $30 knife, this Micarta is some of the best Micarta I've seen out there. I've seen knives that are far more expensive with far less quality Micarta. Some quick size comparisons. Here is the other knife that Lavenderpants sent to us, which is the CJRB mini felspar. Very, very close in size. And then here is the Civivi Elementum, which is also very, very close in size. And then here is another CJRB, the Ria. Just a smidgen shorter, but it's still really good size comparison. Then a couple USA made knives. Here is the Para 3 a lightweight, which is right there with it. I think the lightweight might be just a tiny bit longer. Then here's the Benchmade bug out, which is just a little bit longer too. So you can see, not a very big knife, but not a really small knife. It's kind of in that nice medium size. And it's 3.1 ounces, so the weight is really good. It's actually very, very light. And that comes from these very, very thin liners. I'm not saying very, very thin, but the thin liners. And you see the liner lock. But it's nice. It's a it gives it a good weight because if you look in there, focus my camera. There's no weight relief, but it really doesn't need it because it's already so light. Micarta is a very lightweight, but it's a very strong material. Very durable. I think it's like shock proof and all that stuff where it doesn't like shatter for being dropped or anything like that. But this gives you a perfect length for a full grip. You can get a full grip on it, and yet it's still a small knife. Even with, a knife that has a full grip. So you see that it is thumb stud action, deep carry clip. The clip is amazing. It works so good. And then look at the screws. Like there's plenty of room in there, and all it is the screws. You don't have, because this goes up and behind the Micarta, so it's not on top of it. So yeah, they could have used flat screws right there, but it still works very, very good. So it is T8 with T6 with the other screws. Action, very good thumb stud action. This definitely gives you a good placement for where you're going to grab and where your thumb is going to hit the thumb stud. Detent is nice and crisp. The liner, very easy to get to, as you can see. It's also very easy to disengage. It almost feels like a button. Like you're not really pushing this way, like you're almost just pushing straight in. because it's so easy to disengage. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually kind of a good thing. And it's just because it has such good placement and because it's a comfortable liner. So you can disengage, and then there is no flipper, there's no flipper that rolls over to right here. So you don't have to worry about that getting in your way when you close it. So literally if you're past, the detent's right there. So when you unlock it, the detent is right there. So basically, as soon as you unlock and push, you're already past it. And this one came extremely smooth. I don't know if all of them will come like this, but this one is very, very smooth. Middle finger flick, very, very easy. Now let's talk about the grind. So this is a sheep's foot D2 blade, flat ground blade, but it's only 120 thousandths blade stock thickness. So that's a nice and thin, basically. It's not really thick, it's not overly thick, but it still gives you a nice tip that's not going to break off. So it's a very nice EDC shape. This blade shape works really good for EDC tasks and uses. And I measured the behind the edge thickness at 15 thousandths behind the edge, which is very, very nice. Now I did sharpen this and I did put a nice edge on it, and it took a really nice edge. The D2 seems like it's not bad. I mean, D2 really isn't a steel that should be used in production knives. It's more, of a custom type of blade steel, because the heat treat does take a little bit more care than other steels, but it's still an all-around great steel. It has good edge retention. It's almost stainless, but it's just right before a stainless steel, so it is a steel you're going to have to take a little bit more care of, meaning you have to keep it oiled, and you want to be careful with certain things getting on it, like cutting lemons and stuff like that. You want to make sure you wash it off right afterwards. I've personally never really had a problem with it. I've had a couple knives where a little bit of moisture's gotten in the pivot and stuff like that, but it was more of me not taking care of it. So I never had a problem with D2 when I took care of it. Okay, so but yeah, it took a nasty edge, very sharp. This thing cuts like a beast, and because it has this profile, the handle profile, where it's a straight back, which I love a straight back because it gives you great purchase for push cuts and for just all kinds of grips. When you start tapering and moving the spine of the handle, that's when, in my opinion, you start getting weird grips. Like, this is a great grip. It's just neutral. Your hand does the work. You get to decide where you put your hand. I like that. So it works good for this grip, for this grip, for this grip. I mean, you can do anything with this knife, and for ergos, it works great. And the blade, though, or the tip, is below the pivot right there, so it's going to have a lot of leverage in the tip. You're going to have just as much strength using the tip as you would back here for a push cut, which is really, really nice. I like that, especially for utility purposes. So now let's check out this Micarta a little bit closer. This Micarta is so... Oh, wait, I forgot to mention. I'm sorry. So you see the sharpening choil. It didn't give you a very big sharpening choil. It's pretty close to the plunge grind, but I did sharpen it, and I didn't have a problem with the first sharpening. Now, after a few more sharpenings, it is going to start going in there, but that's like a lot of knives. So the Micarta is gorgeous. You already see it. See, this dark spot right there was not there when we got it. It's already starting to show, what do you call it? Not, I guess, patina, or like the oils. Like, look under the clip. You see the color under the clip? That's the way it was, the whole thing. Now look all around here, how dark it's getting. Very nice. This thing is going to turn very dark blue. It's going to be beautiful. I'm going to love it. And it's a nice texture too, a nice soft texture. It actually, you know, since it is made out of blue jeans, I mean, it has that texture. I love it. It's not aggressive at all. It's just nice and comfortable. Nice warm feeling that like metal and some other materials don't have. That's why Micarta is so nice. Now, it does have jimping back here, and the jimping does work. It's not really sharp, but it does work when you push on it. Now, if you don't push on it, you kind of, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. But once you push on it, then it will work. It does have a lanyard hole back here, nice out of the way. It is secondary to the clip, which I'm really happy. And it only has 2 standoffs, which is very nice and simple. And like I said, these liners are very thin. They're polished very nice. Sometimes polishing the liners looks cheap, but on this one, I think it looks good. I usually prefer more of a bead blasted kind of liner, like, or just, I don't know, more of a stone washed liner kind of. The shiny liners tend to look cheap sometimes to me, but it's not that bad on this one. This one, it's pretty nice. And because, and the knife kind of does its own justice, like once you get it in hand and you actually feel it and you start using it and stuff, that's when you realize, like, oh, okay, yeah, it's, you know, it's a better quality than what the liners made it look like. It does have a decently sized stop pin, not too small, not really big though. Could have been a little bit bigger, but for this size knife, I'm not complaining about it at all. It is on phosphor bronze washers, and if you look, it's on the 2. Let's see if we can zoom in here. If you really look, you see there's 2 phosphor bronze washers on each side, which makes it to where, in my opinion, some of the best phosphor bronze action I've found was when they used 2. When they use 2 washers on each side of the pivot. It seems like it makes it so smooth, where it's like frictionless. Now, Kaiser was doing back in the day 2 of them and 1 nylon washer. So it was 2 phosphor bronze and a nylon washer, and it was so smooth. Some of their knives, and we've still got one that's just ridiculously smooth. You would think it was on bearings, aside from the fact that it's just so smooth, because bearings, you tend to sometimes feel a little bit, you kind of feel the bearings rolling, like it's so smooth, yet you don't have that feeling. It's more of a frictionless feeling. And that other knife that I have from Kaiser is like that too, but just, whew, so smooth. But this one has at least the double, you know, phosphor bronze washers, which, like I said, makes it very, very smooth, especially on this one. Now, this one did come very centered. Very nice, and if it's not completely centered right now, I can turn the pivot just a little bit. The pivot hasn't been coming loose or anything like that, but I have been using it a lot. And, you know, on most knives, if they do start getting loose, then I just tighten it back down. And if I continue to see it get loose, then I'll just take the pivot out. Not all the way apart. I'll just take the screw out, put some Loctite on it, throw it back in there, and as long as it goes the centered, then I'm good. And then you got to make sure you leave it for 48 hours, though. A lot of people make that mistake. They put Loctite on, and then they just go right to flipping it and think it's fine. No, you have to let it sit for 48 hours to let that Loctite dry and seal itself in there. But you do want to, after you put it in, flick it and make sure it's got the action that you want, and then put it away. Make sure it's nice and centered. Make sure it's got the action you want. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Okay, so the good and the bad. Okay, so I love the blade shape, love the weight, love the ergos, love this Micarta. I do like the access to the lock bar. I love the thumb stud action. I like the profile of the knife, of the blade. I love the geometry. It's really nice. The action's amazing. The clip works really good. But let's get to some complaints. I already kind of said some of them. Like here, they could have used flat screws, but this thing works so good that it's not really a complaint. It's more of a nitpick. I do want to quickly add in that they could not put recessed screws in right here, because if you really look, you can see the screw right there. This is the other side if we reverse the clip. Now you see how you see the screw in there? They couldn't recess it because otherwise they wouldn't have enough material for it to be strong. But I at least wish they would have put flat screws. That would have, you know, been a little bit better, because you see how the screws are right here, and then you see how these ones are recessed, and you got these two popping up. It just would have been nicer if they were flat. The next thing, the sharpening choil could have been a little bit better place. Like, you actually can see it right there in the right lighting, that the plunge grind goes to right there. The thing is that the first sharpening I put on it didn't make it to it. So now the next sharpening is definitely going to make it to it, and I'll just cut in a sharpening choil. This kind of knife or blade makes it to where it'll be nice and easy for me to just put a little sharpening notch right there. Also, when you're looking at cutting in a sharpening notch, you want to make sure that the stop pin doesn't land there. So when you close it, there's going to be a closing stop pin. See, on this one, it lands right here, which winds up being underneath this spot right here. So it lands underneath here, so it's not a big deal. But a lot of times it lands here. So you want to just watch out for that and make sure you don't cut out the spot where it stops, because otherwise then it'll stop too far and the blade will wind up hitting your other pins and stuff like that. So it's just something to watch out for when you want to cut in a sharpening choil. Luckily this one gives me a good spot to cut one in. Next thing, the polished liners tends to make knives look cheap, but on this one, once you get it in hand, it does make you feel like, it's better quality than it portrayed itself. But just when they polish the liners, you see that on a lot of budget knives, in which this is a budget knife. I mean, it's under $30. What? Yeah, it's under 30 bucks. Badass deal. Such a good deal. Next complaint is that they use T6s. Now, this is a budget knife, so I can't really complain about that, but I would rather see T8s all the way around. Also, I forgot to say, they did make the clip reversible, if you could see that. So this is the screws to the other side of the clip. If we flip it over, it will stick right inside this little slot. So that's a very cool thing. But yeah, that's basically all the complaints I could come up with. Just those couple, that reversible clip thing, that was not a complaint, just so you know. But yeah, there you go. Peace!